So I remember sitting in the Highland Church of Christ and hearing you preach for the first time. And it was like the heavens opened. I mean, it was so awesome. And so I have followed your work, and I've heard you preach and lecture probably over 100 times in my life. I mean,
Wow.
you're so well known in churches of Christ and beyond. And
Wow.
so I'm just so grateful for this time that you've agreed to spend with me. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. It's my pleasure to do that, and appreciate you inviting me to take this time to share a few things, and I really appreciate you. Thank you.
For sure. So I already explained sort of to Facebook and to Instagram my heart behind this series, but just in case you haven't seen it, I'll just share that for me, when I heard the story of Ahmaud Arbery, I had something in me. I describe it as something broke in me. And for me, it played out like this. I said to myself, Kelly, you cannot do nothing. Like you have to do something. And I said to myself, you know, I have these conversations with myself and I said, well, what am I going to do? Like I'm in a place of privilege. My voice doesn't really matter in this conversation. But as I worked it through with the Lord, where I ended up is I said, even if it doesn't matter, I'm going to tell this story and I'm going to do something anyway. And so as I started thinking about what is my something, what I did not want was just the sound of my own white privileged voice. That's what I did not want. So what I wanted to do was to come alongside people, leaders, influencers who are African American to have this conversation, to sort of tell this story together.
Okay.
So that's when I reached out to you. I had no idea you would say yes. I was like, he's not going to say yes. He's way too busy. But you did. So that's why we are here. So I'm going to tell our audience just a little bit about you if they don't know. You founded the Carl Spain Center on Race Studies and Spiritual Action at Abilene Christian University.
Yeah.
You are a professor, a theologian, a preacher, and you have led conversations on racial justice in so many settings for so many years. So I want to talk some theology, but first I want to know from you, what is the first thing that you felt, thought, and did when you first heard about Ahmaud?
Mm-hmm. Well, I immediately thought about my own son, Jeremiah, who will be turning 21 on May 29th in just a few days. And when I saw it, I became concerned for this reason, that I have seen so many of these incidents over the past decade, until there was almost a place of numbness inside that reminded me of how seeing these types of killings on a constant basis can lead to a sense of numbness within. And I didn't know exactly how to feel, because sometimes you become afraid to feel what you really feel, seeing something like that. And so when I looked at it, I said, well, here we go again. And that was my initial feeling. And then I thought, how is it that two people could shoot down an unarmed human being with such callousness and disregard? How could that have happened? and I wonder if there had been animals that people normally hunt for, as deer, uh, would they have even shot a deer out of deer season with as much free will as they did this African American young man? It seems like you have to have a license to hunt deer in a particular season, but that is not the case for our young African American men who live in this country, that they can be killed at any time, whether in season or out of season. And the country reaches a point to where it almost becomes numb, knowing that this is Ahmaud today. It was Michael Brown and Trayvon and Sandra Bland, and Botham Shem John just the other day, and it goes on and on and on. So when will it stop? That was my immediate reaction. When will this kind of merciless killing stop in the United States of America? When will it end?
I appreciate you sharing that. I want to ask you, you asked two questions. How could this happen? And when will this stop?
Yes.
How do you answer those questions in your own mind and in your own heart?
Well, the first question is, how could this happen?
Yeah.
I think we currently live in an environment in this country to where people who have held these bitter hatreds in their hearts privately and out of the public square since 1968. And those feelings have been driven underground because it was not acceptable or popular or respectable for those views to be shared. But they went underground, and as a terrible cancer, they have metastasized. And so they waited for the convenient moment for someone to invite them back out into the public square. And I do believe that current leaders have tolerated this kind of racial animosity.
Yeah.
Have benefited from it politically. And now it has become like a rabid animal that they cannot control. And so I think that's how it could happen. And then a father with his son. Evidently, the son learned the hatred from the father. And I dare ask who the father learned his hatred from. So there seems to be a clear transmission of hatred from generation to generation in this country in terms of white supremacy. Yeah. And so I think that's how it happened.
Yeah.
Because people were taught to hate. They were encouraged to come out into the open and to be led to believe that it's okay to practice your white supremacy out in the open, to practice your hatred for African Americans and other people of color out in the open. And so you see two generations acting together to do what they've been taught generations to do, and that is to hate someone who is non-white. And so when it end, I don't know when it will end. I think to a large degree, the church has neglected its responsibility and its role in the society to be an agent of peace, an agent of prophetic truth-telling. And the church, just like the politicians, have benefited from people who have these views, and we have not confronted them or challenged them with the gospel of Jesus Christ, as Paul had to do Peter in the book of Galatians.
Yeah.
So when will it end? It will end when people find the courage to be cast out of their own racial groups, to tell the truth and to love people who don't look like them. It's going to demand great sacrifice, and sometimes even to the point of losing your own life, because there are white supremacists who are prepared not only to kill people of color, but to kill white people who sympathize with people of color.